Hey everybody, how you doing? It's been quite some time since it feels like it's been quite some time really since we sat down to catch up on uh, where we were with respect to revenue for the bond issue for what is commonly called Allegiant Stadium, what has been called Las Vegas Stadium for so long, right? And I think it's time that we take a look at where we were with things. And also, a number of you have asked me about a post that I wrote that was deliberately extensive and deliberately detailed because I wanted to present the definitive explanation of what was going on with room tax revenue and where it was leading. And I didn't design it with the idea that any other media were going to repeat it, because there are people who just simply just don't want to repeat something that a black guy says when they know better. And I know some of you don't like that explanation, but these days I simply go with Occam's razor. In a complex world of different reasons for things, you go with the reason that is the most obvious. And you have you have so-called writers and reporters who only quote what they see from another platform of somebody else that kind of looks and thinks like them. I don't. And yet I have an expertise that was blessed by, among other people, the financial advisor on the Las Vegas Stadium project. Okay. So I know that the news isn't something that people want to hear, but look, we're at a place where we have to go back to solving problems. In order to solve a problem, you have to understand what the problem is. You can't wish it away or name call it or riot or anything else. When you have a problem, you have to understand what the problem is, fashion a solution, and then do the solution. And right now, that's still not being done with respect to Las Vegas Stadium and its situation in Clark County. It's just not being done. Now, the good news is that we have an administration that's going to, fingers crossed, get us to a place better than we were before in terms of solving the problem. But hey, Sean Watson, how you doing? And so I'm really optimistic. But I want to take this time to basically explain to you where we are now by working forward in time to 2022 and showing you this. And this right here is the spreadsheet, boom, that comes from my piece. It's entitled Allegiant Stadium, Clark County. This is what the title is up here. Then I'll come back down here. Allegiant Stadium, Clark County bond reserve faces depletion in fiscal year 2022. Okay. This is fiscal year 2022, all the way down here. All right. Now, what are you looking at? First of all, I'm going to make it really easy for you where it reads net. Okay. And right here, I've highlighted, it's in red, negative 26,823,075. That's the net of the reserve that will be left over. That will be taken out that year, excuse me. And then the reserve account left over will be 27,084,779. Now these are basically ballpark figures. In other words, I don't expect that exact figure to be in place when 2022 comes in. All right. The point is that the reserve account, which normally is supposed to be at a much greater level than that, like 90 million, will be at a point where at $27 million there, it will not survive 2023. Okay. So you would say, okay, and what I wrote is that in the year before that, 2021, okay, the reserve account was at 57 million. And after taking out 30 million, and the reason these are occurring is simply because there's not enough revenue to chase the bond debt because of the pandemic and because of lack of government assistance, if this persists, all right? And also, this is coupled with the fact that even before the pandemic started, the tax rate, the hotel tax rate of 88/100ths of 1% was too low. It should have been at 1% to produce a reserve sizable enough to carry the bond issue, and therefore the fiscal system used to pay for the bond issue beyond a pandemic. My point is this: if the tax rate were at 1% rather than 88/100ths of 1%, the Las Vegas Stadium Authority would have had more than enough money to survive a pandemic and ride out an economic recovery for another 2 years plus. Right now, it doesn't. It does not. This has been an ongoing problem before the pandemic. The pandemic, like the pandemic does with everything else, it takes a problem and it makes it a bigger problem. Sometimes it makes it a huge problem. Okay. In this instance, the pandemic has made a problem a bigger problem. And so you would say, how did we get there? All right. And well, how we got there, I've talked about again and again and again. Okay. And I'll basically read to you I'm not going to talk about, how I was made fun of and funding models and all that. I've already said that. You get that picture, whatever. Okay. Whatever. I discuss money and responsibility flows here. And so if you want to understand the money and responsibility flows, in fact, I will start with this because some of you have said, hey, look, how do they work? In fact, I think Mike had asked me that a little while ago. All right. And I'm going to read it just as it says here. It says, to this day, some do not understand that the Las Vegas Raiders do not own Allegiant Stadium. Clark County does. And with the Las Vegas Stadium Authority as representative manager, the Raiders basically serve as what's called STADCO, Stadium Corporation, and have oversight responsibility for the construction of the stadium. And so I show you the chart that introduced the organizational model proposed, and the funding plan was originally presented by Majestic Realty and Las Vegas Sands and the Oakland Raiders before they became Las Vegas Raiders on the 28th of August of 2016 during the meeting of the Southern Nevada Tourism and Infrastructure Committee. And what that says is basically that the state of Nevada above creates the Stadium Authority via state legislation. Clark County gives the $750 million in a kind of a loan agreement to Las Vegas Stadium. And that $750 million, Las Vegas Stadium Authority, which is in the middle, it goes to a construction fund, which is on the right. And below it, the ground lease goes to the Sands Majestic Las Vegas Events Center. That's Events Co. Now, what happened was that Las Vegas Sands and Majestic Las Vegas Events Center was changed to just become STADCO, all right? So the Raiders became both the Events Co. and STADCO at the same time. Because remember, Las Vegas Sands officially jumped out of it, although not unofficially. But so $410 million in NFL G4 loans and PSO proceeds and other sources were the Raiders' contribution to the project. And so that was to trigger a non-relocation agreement, and the Raiders hold the stadium sublease, right? That's what this document shows. So for the most part, This proposed stadium corporate structure is intact, save for the fact that the Raiders have replaced Las Vegas Sands and Majestic as Events Co. They're both Events Co. and Stadco. So in other words, they're the organization that is responsible for putting on events at the stadium, right? So when Mark Davis went and purchased Las Vegas Aces, I'll bet you he did so with the idea that he wants the Aces to eventually play at Allegiant Stadium, therefore giving an additional, 8 basketball home games to add to, or 16 basketball home games, to add to the needed 49 events annually. Is still a tall order because you got a big gap to fill, but it does help to do that. So the Raiders brought in AEG to help them and represent them in the events co-side of the ledger. And the Raiders are Stadco, where they were responsible for gaining, first of all, they're responsible for the design of the facility and gaining the architect and everything else, as well as marshaling their PSL revenues and the other revenues like the NFL G4 loan to put together that side of the construction cost ledger that they were going to use to pay for that. The bond issue comes from Clark County, and that is a huge piece, the $750 million that is causing the problem right now. Okay, and so what I then said was that for those who have asked at the time, that the Raiders, serving as Stadco, collected the first 2 fiscal years of stadium revenue from the stadium hotel tax from 2017 and 18 and up to April of 2018, and used that to pay the building for building the stadium. The reason for that payment design was to sustain a $750 million subsidy while reducing the size of the bond issue to $650 million. It was a nice little trick that was designed by Guy Hobbs of Hobbs On, the financial advisor I mentioned. And thus, the annual bond debt payments were reduced in size because you were actually paying for a $650 million bond and not a $750 million one, okay? It was called PAYGO. Then, starting with the last 2 months of fiscal year 2018, the bond underwriters who contracted with Clark County and the Las Vegas Stadium Authority collect the stadium tax revenue, hotel tax revenue, and they use it to pay the annual bond debt, and will do so for the next 27 years. All right, so I presented this flow of funds. This comes directly from the first Sands Majestic proposal written with the Raiders that was presented to the SNTIC, the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee, in 2016, specifically, I believe, in June. And then I said, there's any Abraham warnings of two small hotel stadium tax rate not taken seriously by some key parties in Las Vegas and the Las Vegas Review-Journal, which was particularly not kind to me in explaining they thought that I was wrong. They didn't get into details. It was just, oh, you're wrong. Well, no, I wasn't wrong. And so I talk about that in this video, which I won't play. It's long. And then I remember I took this matter to Jeremy Aguilo. This is in 2000 on the hotel tax rate issue. This is at CES in 2018, and I asked him about the issue there when I put the question to him. And here is, make sure you can see this from your point of view, and you can. All right, and here is Jeremy Aguilo when I met him at that meeting where I was actually pinned by Tommy White, a construction pin that I actually still have. Thank you, Tommy. But here is Jeremy Aguilo from that day. Make sure the volume is up. There it is. You can hear that.
All of this Sure. The stadium, there are certain documents that the NFL has to provide to the stadium authority board, and these are relatively straightforward. Essentially, certificates saying that the team is allowed to move. those type of things. While they've taken a great deal of action, those documents remain pending until all of our project documents are completed. So those will be added into the total, and then ultimately will be part of the final package that's approved by the Stadium Authority Board before the Stadium Board does what it ultimately needs to do, and that's request that the county issue $750 million up to $750 million.
It might be a crazy request. You said about 80% done. Do you know what the total number of documents you guys have to get done is?
Well, there's more than 30 of them, and I think we have, look, none of them are 100% complete. There's a couple of things we have to tick and tie and all this stuff. The next big one that's on our docket is the Stadium Authority Board Development Agreement. I think everybody's focusing on that.
Anything else going on?
I don't think so. Thanks so much.
It's possible, given the waterfall and the flows of the bonds, that stadium hotel tax could be increased, taken back to the legislature for an adjustment.
Is there any possibility?
Yeah.
Sure, the legislature can do anything that it wants to do relative to the hotel tax. I think it would be very unlikely, but I think it's certainly anything's possible.
How do you sound likely for political reasons? Or just...
Well, look, I think that there's a special session that was created. I think that the room tax was increased significantly, and I think that there was an expectation that we would get this deal done relative to that. If facts and circumstances were to somehow change, I think the legislature are reasonable people, and they may take that under advisement, but we're going to work very hard to get this deal done with what the rules the legislature put in place for us.
You're officially the point person for this. You've been historically a well-sought-out economist for the region. How's the transition been for you?
Well, I don't know that I'm necessarily the point person. I think Steve Hill, the chairman of the committee, is actually the point person.
This guy's a legend. I'm not taking anything away from him.
No, neither am I. My job is to operate a staff and to get the work done, and so we'll continue to do that. Thanks, Danny. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the time.
Great to see you.
Yeah, and so again, I'm not nothing against Jeremy myself at all. But there was a concern then, and I was trying to kindly suggest that, hey, you know what, this thing needs to be adjusted. That was 3 years ago, okay, and so basically for the presentation set that I'm showing you, as I said, I used the revenue data that was provided on the website of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, and in the meetings and information sets that are provided for public view. However, bond debt and stadium and bond debt coverage ratio costs were not part of those presentations. And let me adjust this so you can see my face, and you don't have to. I'm not going to ask you to read these words because they're too small. It's better that you see me talking, right? So that we can get to the point of it. And so I think that's better. But back to what I was saying. That basically the bond debt and bond debt coverage ratio costs were not part of those presentations. The Las Vegas Stadium Authority presented an expense calculation representing its needs, and you can't use those expense estimates to figure out or back into the $11.6 million that was the unscheduled draw. Remember when they said the unscheduled draw is another way of saying, oh my Lord, we have to go back. We had to draw from our reserve. Here's the catch, folks. The draw is actually bigger than that. Why? Because it straddled fiscal years. So in other words, that was taken from the previous fiscal year, but the problem brings us into the next fiscal year. So there's going to be another unscheduled drawdown. Watch, by the end of this coming fiscal year, you're going to have another unscheduled drawdown only because the fiscal year is offset. In other words, it doesn't match the calendar year, okay? So anyway, what I said is that to get to the unscheduled $11.6 million drawdown, you had to use the actual bond document and the bond debt expense table that's on page 26 of 276. And you can download that in the document that is part of this presentation that is on Oakland News Now. And I'll put the link up to here if you want to go to it on your own. All right. And thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. Right there. Okay. And so getting back to the point here, that's the link. And I also built the spreadsheet, which you can also look at there yourself. And so if you're wondering what the definition of debt coverage ratio is, all right, the definition is, quote, a measure of a firm's available cash flow to pay current debt obligations. But in municipal finance, it's also a measure used to design a bond issue. In the case of Clark County bond issue, the debt coverage ratio decided upon that was created as far back as the SNTIC, all right? And it was done at the behest of the financial advisor. Yeah, Guy Hobbs says, hey, look, I want a 1.5 to 1. Now, normally it's 2 to 1, all right? And it's a controversial decision. It was then and it is now, okay? Because municipal bonds generally have a 2 to 1 debt coverage ratio. In other words, you're bringing in twice the revenue to cover the bond debt. In the Vegas case for the Raiders Stadium, it's only 1.5 that. 1.5, and they got away with it. And to this day, I'm still shocked that the industry let them do it. But you know why it happened? Because you had all these underwriters who were salivating over this deal, wanting to get a piece of it because they knew, and everybody knew it was going to be the largest subsidy in sports history. That's why. And they wanted to have the fees from that because they're going to get rich, like 17 million off that. All right. That's why. They were seeing money. Okay. So to cut to the chase, it means that less revenue is required to be collected for the same level of bond debt. With all that, the 1.5 to 1 debt coverage ratio was placed in as law with respect, Nevada law, with respect to the stadium bond issue. It is on page 35 of 68 of the Senate Bill 1 legislation that governs the Raiders Stadium to this day. All right. And it must be noted that the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau has had a historically much higher debt coverage ratio of 3 to 1. They were very proud of their very stringent requirements for their what are called revenue bonds, but I digress. What normally should result in a higher interest rate on the Clark County Stadium bond issue was countered by the decision to make it a general obligation bond and not a revenue bond. Why? Because in the event that the bond revenue is low, like we're talking about, okay, so that it depletes its own reserve, which is going to happen, the debt would simply be paid, or what is called backstopped, by the Clark County General Fund itself. That's why. In other words, the same general fund that goes to pay for education expenses and road repairs, operating, just running the government, running Clark County, right? That one. The one that the taxpayer money goes into and property taxes and all that, okay? Basically, it would wind up crowding out money that would be used for services. That's the danger, okay? If the stadium bond issue were done by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, it would be 3 to 1. It would be a possibly higher tax rate and would have vastly more money to deal with, not only during economic downturn, but at the level of loss caused by the pandemic and the American economic and social response to it, okay? And my point is this. I'm going to want to emphasize this point. In other words, am I saying that with a higher tax rate and a standard 2 to 1 debt coverage ratio that the bond would not be in trouble even during a pandemic? Yes, I am saying that. Yes, I am saying that. Okay. Yes, I am saying that. The dollar flows would have been greater by double, at least. Okay. At least. And would have bought the project enough time to recover and the economy enough time to recover. But not. Thus, the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee created the Las Vegas Stadium Authority while directing Clark County to issue the stadium bonds, thus maintaining the bond issue's status as a general obligation bond. In other words, a bond that goes right into the coffers of the county government. Okay. Now, here's the next table that I drew up. Okay. And I'll get to your questions because I'm moving through this and I'll get to your questions. So type up your questions down there and I'll go back and I'll go through them and I'll say hello to everybody. All right. Hey, Mr. Compton, I have not forgot about you, man. Okay. This is boom. All right. That's the latest table. I know you're saying Zinni is kind of small. Let me see if I can zoom in and enlarge it so that it's better for you to see there. Okay, and I believe, yeah, that's a little better. Let me see if I can raise it up a bit there so it's more center screen. And yeah, okay. And let me give it one more try in terms of enlarging it, zooming in more and zooming in more. And there we are, right there. Okay, right there. Okay, cool. All right. Now, let me direct you to what this is. This is 2019, first year. All right. This was a year which was really, hey, there wasn't a problem. All right. You had, to make it really easy, we look down where it says carryover. That's very important. Why? Because were it not for that carryover, the bond issue would have been in trouble from the start. Okay? Were it not for the carryover, the bond issue would have been in trouble from the start. All right? But you have a carryover. Okay? That carryover, when you looked at the negative 4.78 million, still left you with a net of 3.385 million. All right. That carryover, all right, right there is extremely important. Okay. Extremely important. And so what happened was that the bond issue was let in April 2018, but the actual collection of stadium tax revenue and application of it to pay down the bond issue didn't happen until fiscal year 2019. And the reason for that was born of a genius design, which was installed by Guy Hobbs, a financial advisor, who was faced with the Mark Davis and Shel Nadelson issued a directive that the bond issue had to be $750 million. But he was up against political fears of what will be the largest subsidy ever provided for an American sports stadium. Guy designed a method where revenue from the tax would be collected before the bond issue needed to pay the bond debt and for a full 2 years. So what you're looking at is, all right, and here's an update from Guy himself. Guy said, hey, Zenny, remember too that the interest earned on the construction proceeds and upon the debt reserves also inures to the benefit of the debt reserves by design. Hope that's all as well. In other words, Guy's not saying I'm wrong. He's trying to help me out here. Guy's a great guy. All right. And as I said, he's a true professional and a good person. Okay. And then he said, and I asked him about the dollar amount on the interest earned. He said, without going back into the accounting records, I don't have an update value. However, it's in the realm of the amount that was drawn against the reserve, the 11 million, to make up the December debt payment. Clearly, it was not an insignificant sum and was wise to have the interest accrue to the benefit of the reserve fund. Interest on the reserve fund itself also inures to the reserve fund. Okay, that would be 11 million. But as you will learn, the result still places the bond reserve in debt reserve in danger of depletion at the end of fiscal year 2022. All right, but my point is the reason why you had this carryover here, the carryover of 8 million, was from the pay-go. All right. They stopped. What happened was that once the mark of April 2018 came, there was a gap between April 2018. They took everything that was collected at that up to that point and they gave it to the Raiders. All right. That was the plan, was to take that pay-go, give it to the Raiders. The Raiders were adding it to the construction bill. So between April and July, those monies that were collected per month equaled 8.1666 million. That was the carryover. And that is what saved the bond issue from any fiscal problem right off the bat, that carryover. Okay. So that's what you see here. The net is a positive result. Okay. So we go down to here, as I said, that much of that pay-go tax revenue, as it was called, was eventually turned over to the Raiders, operating in its role of what was called Stadco, Stadium Corporation. And as I pointed out to you, that was done to April of 2018, the month the stadium bonds were issued for sale. And because of the 2 years of pay-go, and I'm repeating myself here, the actual bond issue was only 647 million, not 750 million. That resulted in a lower bond debt but it's still not low enough for the tax rate, which is too low. That is why in 2016, the SNTIC initially said, hey, you know what? Why don't we do a $550 million study? And Mark Badane, among others, went ape, okay? He hit the ceiling and they backed off. But the stage was set. The low tax rate was born of political and local casino industry concerns that the tax would be passed on to hotel guests in the form of higher room rates. And they were sensitive to losing conventions to Chicago and San Francisco. The SNTIC said, hey, you know what? We're going to go with 88 100ths of 1%. They went as low as 0.7%. And then they did the math and figured out, like anybody else could, that, hey, that's going to make us even worse trouble. Imagine if they had, stuck with that. Meanwhile, the Raiders and Adelson had insisted on $750 million and not anything less. The pay-go design was a way to achieve that. The combination of the pay-go reserves and the bond payment period revenues show that the call for a $750 million subsidy was met, but at a cost. I want to emphasize something to you before I go further, okay? Look at me. The reason why the Raiders started unloading players that year, remember that? Okay, that 2018, remember that was the year that Khalil Mack got shipped off and Amari Cooper wasn't signed and all that, was because for the first time in the Raiders' history, it faced a situation where its organizational financial ledger was impacted by a stadium. In other words, they expected to have approximately 20 million more in revenue from the pay-go for the stadium than they actually got. And they were like, panic. So it wasn't that they not only unloaded players, but think about the draft. Remember, with Reggie McKenzie, they suddenly embarked on this strategy where they were trying to pick the low-hanging fruit, and they got Maurice Hurst for a song because the poor man had heart trouble, and they let him drop to the 5th round before they took him. All that was done because of this. And I don't care if the Raiders tell you it wasn't, the numbers prove that it was. Okay? The numbers prove that it was. And I dare the Raiders to present numbers to the contrary in this detail. They won't. This is what caused the Raiders' problem. And the Raiders would have been better off by saying, hey, you know what? We got a situation here. People love authenticity. Fans would have said, hey, we got you. Handle it, right? You don't need to give us smoke and mirrors. It's not necessary. But I digress. So anyway, getting back to what I was saying to you, that in the table I'm about to the table that I showed you, we saw that the debt coverage ratio forced a bond debt that was over revenues by 4.7 million. But that bad situation, you understand that, was saved by the carryover of 8 million that I showed you, right? And I said that in the next 2 months of May and June of collections was applied to the next fiscal year, and that 8.1 million offset the 4.7 million and produced a surplus of 3.4 million, which leads to this table right here. Bazinga. All right? Bazinga. And this one shows that because of, and these are, bond debt estimates versus actual revenues coming in, okay? And, adjusted because of the pandemic. This is when the pandemic started to be, a monster thing. Note that we get to a point where we have a carryover of 3 million against a shortfall of 14 million, which leaves us with 10 million. And at that time, we had $57 million left in the bonds reserve account. All right. That was then. Okay. And as I wrote, I said the revenue expressed in the column at the left, the extreme left, is from the Las Vegas Stadium Authority files. And as you can see, the pain from the pandemic, the lockdown caused reduction in visitors without compensation that was first expressed in March and then really became bad in April and May. It's all right here. Okay. It improved in June, but not substantially. It caused a loss I calculated at 14.23 million, but the carryover from 2019, the 3.385 million, produced the negative 10.9 million that you see in the spreadsheet. that is not far off from the 11.6 million that was actually drawn down. So now you see how the pieces of the puzzle are being fit together here, all right? It left a $57.28 million reserve remaining. Now, let's see how this is going to look for 2021 this year. And this is what I would call the forecast year. Why do I call it the forecast year? Because as you know right now, we're just in 2021, okay? So we're just in 2021. So let's go back to what we're looking at here. There. Here, July, August, September revenues are actual and provided by Las Vegas Stadium Authority files. But for the rest of 2021, I tested an improved hotel climate. And here's where you can, test all kinds of scenarios, but still problematic for a number of reasons, producing an average monthly revenue of $2 million. Much of what we saw in March of 2020, when the pandemic conditions started to become obvious. Note that the result produces a net negative of $30 million by the end of 2021 fiscal year. That cuts into the remaining reserve of $57.2 million, leaving just over $27 million that would be the reserve of 2022. And so I looked at one conservative forecast, all right, of 2.2 million. Now, and that leaves us with a reserve there. Now I want to show you something, okay, that is unfortunately rather chilling. And I say it's unfortunately rather chilling because, well, it is. And so it is. Now note that I have a revenue here, an average of 2.2 million, right? Okay. Now, according to the numbers for January, according to numbers from January, all right, do you know what those numbers are actually, folks? I'm going to show you. Hold on to your butts, okay? Hold on to your butts. I'm going to show you what they actually were by search. This is not pretty at all. And there it is. Boom. And I'll enlarge it so that you can see it. The search is Allegiant Stadium room tax revenue. And I will go to view. I will go to zoom in. And then I'll go to view and I'll go to zoom. Oops, I went the wrong way. Wrong way, Feldman. That was an old Gilligan's Island episode. Just call me Feldman. At any rate, there we are. Yeah. And I quote from the Review Journal, nonetheless. The latest room tax figures released by the Las Vegas Stadium Authority show 1.17 million in revenue was generated in November by 88% tax on hotel rooms. Okay, so remember that I used 2.2 million. Folks, we're on the way to depletion. Okay, we're on the way to depletion, and Sean says, "I believe you, Sean. It's not for you to believe me. What I want is for people to structurally understand what's going on, because there's too much of this. Well, I believe him just because, right? I'm laying out the structure for you and the numbers in the spreadsheet so you can look at them yourself so that you can get it. And the reason I'm doing this is because there are a lot of people, and I understand people are busy and everything, but look, when I was growing up, we didn't have this. All we had, and I'm saying this for a lot of people out there, like myself and David Compton, we just had stuff to read, okay? And we were lucky to read, we were able to get our hands on. Now, you have stuff that competes for your mental attention and your bandwidth. And so you come away with people who don't want to learn anything. They don't want to learn economics. They want to have their own ideas about economics, be it liberal or conservative, but they don't want to do the math to figure out if what they're thinking about is either right or wrong. They just want to have their idea. And what they do is they'll cherry pick something online. It's like, see, this proves this. And they don't understand what it is they're looking at. I want people to understand. All right. It is vitally important to our future that we start understanding why things happen again. And I say this with a tearful concern. I'm really concerned about the future of our society because we don't try to understand things. It doesn't matter if it's this or football strategy or anything else. We're dominated by who shouts the loudest or who gets mad and storms the Capitol. And by the way, those guys didn't even vote. They did. And the majority of them didn't even vote. They were paid by Trump. That's another story. We've got to get back to a point where we study. We have, because then you can say you've got your model, right? And then I've got mine, and we can discuss the details. And in discussing the details, we get to the answer. Because I could be wrong about something, and you could be right about something, and vice versa. The whole point is we both took the effort to build an understanding of how the numbers work. Okay? That's what's so vitally important today. And that's why I push this. Because you have media out there that used to do this sort of thing. But you have people today who call themselves journalists. I don't call myself a journalist, but they'll throw that in your face, and all they are glorified PR people quoting what somebody told them rather than doing the math themselves, excuse me. All right? Okay? Whew. All right, now let me get to your points. But the basic story of this is the tax rate is too low. The amount of money they're taking in at 1.7 million is already lower than my projections, excuse me. All right. And so by the end of this year, there's going to be another drawdown unless they get help from the government. And this is why it's vitally important for those of you out there watching this to make sure you call in Las Vegas or Raiders fans, okay? This is a national issue. Call your senators and congressmen and say, hey, look, you're concerned about Las Vegas because as Las Vegas goes, so goes the country. Forget the idea that, oh, the coronavirus relief bill is too big. The problem we're facing is huge. It's freaking gigantic. It's at least a $6 trillion problem. Why? Because in part, we had a shelter-in-place policy that said, hey, you stay there, but we're not going to pay you. And we did that across the board. We told casino businesses to shut down. We didn't pay them. We fucked up. Okay? Massively. I'm not saying I don't agree with shelter in place. We had to do it to save our lives. But government, the way it was done, heaped a gigantic bill upon itself. Upon itself. Do you understand what I'm saying? Upon itself. And we have to dig our way out of it. We were stuck, but we didn't see what happened was you had politicians that wanted to tell everybody to stay in. They didn't want to pay for it. And we didn't, and see, collectively, people were saying, oh, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, stay in. I'm saying, yeah, stay in. Definitely stay in. Definitely stay in. But you gotta reenact. You gotta pay people. I said way back, I wrote this right back in May of last year that we had a $9.8 trillion problem and that households at least should have received $7,900 a month. You hear what I'm saying? A month. So you say, oh, that'll create inflation. I would say, well, actually, it won't. We'll have a gigantic savings rate, though, because we'll all be in place. We had a nirvana for about, 3 months? People were in place. They were ordering things. Crime was down. You remember that? It's like a nice little slice of life for a time. All right? And then what happened? The money, they stopped paying because the Trump administration got stingy with the PPP stuff. And they didn't give Bank of America and other organizations enough administrative cost money. We can't do that. We have to accept the responsibility that we've created for ourselves and get ourselves out of this situation. This problem is fixable. And don't believe it's not. It's fixable. And if somebody says, well, we're spending with the socialists, anybody who tells you that we're going to become a socialist economy is stupid. We're not a socialist economy. We're not a capitalist system. We're an American system. Which means what? Which means that we have government to fix the market when the market goes bad. All right? The market is us. When that buying and selling of goods gets cut off because of shelter in place, government has to step in to fix it. That's the role of government. So have those people pay attention to how government is actually ran. Stop with this stupid stuff. Born of some trick to get you to vote either left or right. Forget it. Think about the engineering of this economy and fix the engine. It's the engine that needs to be fixed. We have to get to a point of pointillist, intelligent fixing of our economy with the objective of achieving full employment again, a money supply that's enough so that we don't trigger the high crime rates that are going on. These crime rates are high because people don't have jobs and money. That's what's going on. Those folks that stormed the Capitol, they all had money troubles. Remember Joe the plumber back in Obama? The guy that said, "Oh, I've got 200. That's gonna your tax idea, Mr. President Obama or Mr. Obama, is going to cost me because I'm making $240,000 a year." He wasn't making $240,000 a year. He then had to adjust and say, "Well, I was going to buy this business that generated $240,000 a year." No, he wasn't. Do you know how much Joe the plumber was really making? He was only making $40,000 a year. He lied. Why? He wanted to make himself look bigger than he really was. There are a lot of Joe the plumbers that storm the Capitol. They don't know. They're prideful people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. They don't want to be the first to tell you they have money trouble. I don't blame them. They were duped. Okay? We got to stop duping each other. We got to start helping each other. Excuse me. All right. Now I'll get to everything that you've said. I promise. I'm going backward to go up. And any questions you have and comments, I'll read them from the start. Hello, Shine Watson. How you doing? It's true. He says, Zinni, you're going to become a councilman. No! I'm just trying to raise money for this company, man. Helping my mom here. Hey, Mr. Compton, how you doing? Great time with the Super Bowl, huh? Muhammad says, ZZ, long time, finally able to catch this live stream. Here we go. Yep. Happens if they default. If that is what happens is what basically happened, we have a model to be Raiders deal 2. Okay. What happened in Raiders deal 1 is that because the personal seat licenses in Oakland didn't collect the necessary $83.45 million, they needed $83.5 million, and we only got $56.4 million. That gap, because of that gap, with the interest on the bond issue, the bond debt, the way the contract was written, in order to guarantee the payments, they took it out of both the $10 million out of the county of Alameda, $10 million from the city of Oakland for the next 20 plus years. That's what happened. And a similar situation, a similar fate will be in the future of Clark County unless they get help from the government, or maybe I thought maybe Las Vegas Sands was going to come in and say, look, we'll buy the stadium off of you and we'll clear the debt. But I don't know that Las Vegas Sands has the financial ability to do that. Okay. At one point, it looked like they were. I know Mr. Adelson's worth $30 billion. They could still do it. Keep an eye on that. All right. Sean Watts says, Zinni, you're the best. You're always on top of your game. Keep up the great work. Thank you, sir. I gave you the link there as I scroll down here. I'm sorry, I meant to show that. Okay. That's me. And then I scroll down here. This is Muhammad says, wow, they bankrupt themselves on purpose. They will bankrupt themselves on purpose. I don't know if it's on purpose. I'd have to think about that one. Sean says, I believe you. And again, it's not so much believing me. I want you to do the math to understand it. I feel better if you said, I understand this now, as opposed to believing me. David says, I don't quite have the education you have on the stadium thing, but the question is, what does this mean for the future of the stadium or the Raiders? Good question, David. It means that, well, the stadium is there. All right. From the Raiders' perspective, I'll tell you, it means that the bond issue and its problems are such that the Raiders could turn around and say, hey, you know what? There's a default here, and the money is you guys said you were going to have to take care of that. You didn't have it. And so technically that's a breach of contract. And guess what? That would break. That's right. It would break the non-relocation agreement. Okay. As I read the agreement. All right. Because suddenly you have a financial problem that went against what was told to them originally. Now that opens up the door for the stadium to Raiders to do that. Will they do it? Well, let's think about that. Where would they go? And why? Why would you give up a stadium that basically you hand designed, and you're able to carve out a situation where, after being under the thumb of the city of Oakland, the county of Alameda for so long, in a situation where they didn't seem to really respect your position when the ownership or the operation of the Coliseum changed from kind of a private group to a public group, why would you want to go back to that when you have a state-of-the-art structure in a city that is synonymous with American culture? Let's face it, it is. Okay, I love Las Vegas, so do you. All right. Why would you want to give all that up for what, to go back to what you had? Yeah, your expenses are more, but you know what? You've got an ability to make more money than you did before. Why are you going to give that up? So when you look at the Raiders situation from that perspective that I described, they have a lot more control over their business destiny in Las Vegas than they ever had in Oakland. That's just a fact. All right. And the city of Oakland, they didn't want to see that. And there are people who, I think, like Oakland Councilman Dan Calb, who basically said, let them go because, there are other people who want. This is hubris that I think Dan should not have expressed, but he did. He said that, hey, look, you know what? There are people who want the property and they're willing to pay for it. Talking about the Coliseum. That's bad because you don't know that the money is going to be there all the time. And not only that, the Raiders meant so much to the Oakland culture. To think of it that way and to think of the Raiders that way, I thought was not the best look for Dan. And Dan's a friend of mine, but he's also a council member. And hey, you know what? That means a huge responsibility. Okay. So the future of the Raiders will be in Las Vegas. The Raiders are not coming back to Oakland. And I say that for those people out there who seem to harbor this dream that I think that the deal is going to collapse and the Raiders are going to return to Oakland. You're nuts. I never said that at all. What I thought was going to happen years ago, all right, was that between Mark Davis and his not quite handling Mr. Adelson the right way and all that, I thought the deal was going to fall apart, is what I thought. And it took a long time for the deal to be officially consummated. Even after the vote in Arizona that I had attended and that you can see here at Zenny62 on YouTube, the whole live stream, I'm going to relive that whole moment for whatever reason. Maybe you like the food at the hotel. I don't know. So, moving along. There you go, Dave. Okay. So then He says, and everything you said tonight almost sounds like the Raiders made a mistake leaving in leaving Oakland. Under the circumstances, I think they could have had a similar situation, but there wasn't anybody to show them that was possible. Okay, everything that we did was reactionary. Eric Grubman was right, who was representing NFL business ventures. We were reacting. We were not creating for them. It would have been a different situation if we had said, "Hey, you know what? You need a new stadium, and let's get together. Let's talk about your situation, and let's fashion a plan for the Raiders in the future to make them part of Coliseum City, and in a way that might smooth out some problems that you're experiencing and get you some more money." Okay, they would have loved to hear that. All right, but that didn't happen. And what made it worse is you had people like Floyd Kephart coming along who wanted to trick everybody in the idea that he had all this money when he didn't. And why? Because the minute he got control of that land, that's what would give him the wealth. Because while he's trying to fashion a stadium plan, he's then turning around trying to get the city to give him $200 million. You know what he was going to do with that $200 million? That tax money from the taxpayers? He was going to give it to Mark Davis and get a percentage of the Raiders. So basically, we would have made him a billionaire, closer to a billionaire. But let's do a sucker deal. I told Libby, don't do it. Okay? And we didn't have people who really had the financial wherewithal to really make this happen. And I'm not saying that about Floyd Kephart. You know who told me that? The city of Oakland said that he didn't have the money. That didn't come from me. That's not. I have no desire to like or dislike Floyd Kephart. He simply is part of history. So, I think, look, at the time, Las Vegas was a better call. But what got Raiders into trouble was, and I said it way back then, you're resting your entire financial future on hotel tax, which basically ties you to the fortunes of the economy. That was the error. If the Raiders had stayed in Oakland under Ronnie Lott's system, the one the Lott group had put together, they would not have been in the same kind of trouble. Okay. The financial design, the structure was more robust. This one, as you can see, is quite flimsy. So I think every state was happy Biden got elected. State bailout is coming. Hope so. Eric says Vegas is there because of disposable California income. Save the California will save Las Vegas. Vegas, you're on your own. Mr. D says Mark Davis and the NFL came up with almost $1 billion for Vegas. How much were they willing to spend for Oakland? Well, I don't know that. I don't know that they actually did that. Okay, when you say they came up with $1 billion, Sheldon. Let's not get this twisted, Mr. Seedy. It was Sheldon Adelson that produced that deal. Sure, Mark Davis got $550 million from the NFL, a great windfall in PSL monies, but it was Adelson. All right, Adelson. Okay, Adelson. All right, Sheldon Adelson. Excuse me. It was Sheldon Adelson that did that. Okay, and it's very important to keep that in mind. Very important. Okay, Sheldon Adelson. So, hey, Patrick, how you doing? He says, I just don't think Vegas. I don't understand what that means. All right. So that's my presentation. He says, oh, what impact does Sheldon Adelson passing on Raiders have now? Great. Patrick, that's an excellent question. I think Well, as I understand it from what I read, and I haven't had a chance to talk to me about this lately, but that I understand that Mr. Adelson's desire was to have the Raiders have his kids own the Raiders. Where that is, I have to investigate. Um, the point is it still possible that could happen? I think so. I think so. Mark Davis is in a place where he may want to explore how liquid he can make himself. I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know he would want to step away from football like that, and I don't think he ever would. But he's in a great place. He's in a place where he can make an owner's draw. You need $10 million to build a house? Take it from over here, okay? He's in that position. I'm not saying he's in a position to be irresponsible, but he is in a better financial position today than he was, say, 4 years ago. All right. So that's the presentation for tonight. It is 1:49 in the morning, and I'm glad I did this. I was going to talk about The Bachelor. I'll save that for tomorrow. I'm glad I did this. I'm going to thank you, everybody, for showing up. And Mr. Compton, you know what I'm going to do next? Hey, folks, there's 20 of you here. I want to send you an invite. If anybody wants to, I want to do this a different way. This is what I'm putting here, this link. That link right here. Okay. If you grab that, you can sync your camera, your phone's camera, and microphone. If you want to make a comment, come on in. I'm going to start doing that this way because, Clubhouse is a thing, and I think people like to have these kind of exchanges. I did this with some fans of the weekend, and boy, we had a great time. And I meant to do that more this time. This is very impromptu. So if Dave or anybody wants, come in, you just come on in, but make it quick because it's nearing early morning. Well, it is early morning here. I don't know where you guys are at. So, okay. Other than that, if no one's coming in the next, I'll give you 3 minutes. All right. You can pick it off there. Or if somebody's coming in, give me a heads up. Say, wait, if you want to say something. Mohammed says, Compton says now, okay, get your butt in here, man. So Mohammed says, I see NFL expanding to just cover losses from this year. Expect the billionaire club to grow. Hey, Mohammed, that's a good call. And, that's a good call. I know that Ray Bobbitt's working on a proposal to try to bring an African-American group bring football back to Oakland. So I think, I think what you're talking about is something to have. Hey, I believe we are going to be joined by none other than, here he is at the stream. Hey, Mr. Compton, how you doing?
Trying to keep going like you. I'm enjoying your show tonight.
Awesome, man. What are your thoughts about what we're talking about?
Hey, I believe
you said a mouthful tonight.
By none other than.
Yeah, you said a mouthful.
Here he is.
Yeah, hey, turn your volume.
Hey, Mr. Compton, how you doing?
Because I can hear myself twice.
I'm enjoying your show. I'm not sure how to.
Awesome, man. What are your thoughts about what we're talking about?
You said a mouthful.
Oh, hey, Joseph, I have to.
Turn your volume. How you doing?
I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And, I left a message with her. I need to check back in with him. See how he's doing. Watch. I'll find out. If you turn the volume, there. We need to check back in with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah. I'll find out. Right.
I'll try it.
Okay, all you gotta do is the video that you're looking at this, take the volume and just move it.
I'm gonna figure this out.
Dial. Move it.
It works better on my phone.
Oh no, I'm just saying move the volume. There's
I'll try it.
and I think you've got it. Sounds like you got it. Yeah.
Is that it?
It's a little. It's getting there. All you have to do is see whenever you have the video that's playing, you turn the video that's playing, that's producing the sound, you turn it to 0 volume. It's not going to affect your ability to talk. We'll hear you, okay? But
I can't hear you though.
But that's okay. You can. I can hear you. And not only that, right? And also, you can call me. You can hear me, right?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah. Or you need an earpiece. You need an earpiece or something. I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure on how to operate this stuff.
Yeah, what you need basically is because I can hear you through here, right? But StreamYard, you should have your StreamYard open. That should be your only feedback. Nothing else. In other words, you don't need to have another window open, just StreamYard. And if you turn up your StreamYard volume, you can hear me. Okay? And your StreamYard's on your phone, right? So you turn your phone on. Yeah, you can hear me, right?
No.
Oh, you wait a minute. You just heard me say, you just heard me ask if I can hear you. You said no. So you can hear me.
No, I can hear you.
Yeah, that's all that matters. You can hear me. That's it. I can hear you and you can hear me. That's cool. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So anyways, I was saying. We'll get there. Anyway. Yeah, so
we can try this another time.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, but this is great. But I'd like to just, but as far as what are questions you had or thoughts about what we were talking about?
Well, like I said, you said a lot. You said a lot, and that's part I was trying to really keep up with you on. That's why I made my first comment about everything that you said. And I didn't want to. I felt like I was lost a little bit. Okay.
I understand.
Because of the number part and all the
there's a lot of moving parts
and trying to make all of right there work. And so you're good at that. I'll give you that right there. That's why you went to Skyline. I went to Fremont. So, but nevertheless,
you said that I
just fit through it all. No, I know. Don't worry about it. No biggie. They always have better people up here.
Hey, folks,
but nevertheless, like I said, I try to do it again and keep it up.
Yeah. I try to do is
cool, like I said.
If you go to Oakland News now, you go to Oakland News now, and then this is the and I'll put up the piece that I put together on Oakland News Now, the post rather. If you go to Oakland News Now here, it's excuse me, it's not where I want it to be, but if I take this, let me say not now. Well, it's not going to let me do it anymore. At any rate, if you go to Oakland News Now and you type in the search field on the right, you type all you have to do is type Allegiant Stadium bond, okay? And you'll see it. The title of the post is basically, Allegiant Stadium, Clark County Stadium Bond Reserve faces depletion in fiscal year 2022. Or you can just type Stadium Bond Reserve. You'll get the post that I wrote. So John says, "Hey, do you think Ray Bobbitt's going to succeed in getting an expansion team to Oakland?" I hope so. I think that it's a tall order that requires the involvement of a lot of people, and it requires, I think, more than anything, it requires two things: a billionaire that really wants to play in the NFL world, and the NFL wanting to have that black billionaire involved in it. That's what it takes at the end of the day. Okay, everything else is secondary. In every situation, like for example, Bob McNair, the late Bob McNair, who I had the pleasure of knowing for so many years, he had showed his cogeneration plant from 1.6 billion and took 750 million of that, and that was the franchise fee. So you would say, why did he spend so much? We knew that at the end of the day, the NFL essentially gives you the money to operate your franchise. And once you pay your franchise fee, you get your television rights monies, and then you can leverage money from sponsorships, local sponsorships, radio, television, endorsements, billboards, all kinds of creative ways. Maybe you want to use the stadium for a tech event and you want to rent out spaces of the stadium so you have people looking at tech kiosks while they're watching the football game, right? All kinds of creative ways you can think of, right? And if you can get the involvement of the government in terms of a bond issue and a subsidy, as was the case with Harris County or Clark County in the Las Vegas case, then you're good to go. So that, all that has to fall into place. But to make it work in the Oakland parlance, requires a deep-pocketed consortium. It really does. Are those people out there? Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot to understand.
Well, yeah.
That.
Well, it is, but that's life. I'm not saying that at the end of the day, you can take any complex system and boil it down to some simple, what are called drivers. In other words, in every complex system of variables, they're both independent and dependent variables, right?
Right.
But you have to identify the dependent variables and then the independent ones and why they're independent. And then say, of those variables, which ones are the ones that are going to cause the greatest ripple effects? For example, in this instance, it's the tax. I'm talking about the Vegas situation. The tax rate, hotel tax rate, is the main driver here. As the debt coverage ratio is secondary. But if they had 1.4% or 1%, they would have been in a much better position, but they're not.
Yeah.
And that spigot determines how much money comes in, So it says, what do you think of Al Davis versus the NFL? I haven't seen it. It's a good. I'll watch it because I haven't seen it. At first I had gotten the impression that Amy Trask, my longtime friend, was going to be left out of it, and so I didn't want to watch it. And then I realized I was wrong. Right? Have you seen it, Dave? Al Davis versus the NFL.
Did I say it again?
Have you seen Al Davis versus the NFL?
No, I haven't seen that neither. The deal is with that. Ever since they've left Oakland, maybe I felt like a lot of others did who were in Oakland did. I'm from Oakland, okay. and there was always that bond, no matter what. But when they packed up and they left, it kind of made me draw back because I seen how Mark Davis' attitude to me was just, it was like, it had nothing to do with Oakland in any kind of way, despite of whatever. And
No, he
so it makes it
handle
very,
that
made it very difficult to just want to keep up with him.
right. He didn't handle that well. I think for me, I made a decision. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I built my business in part around the NFL, and the people who I came to know, because I was reporting and blogging about this issue, and got very involved in what I was doing, seemed, some of them, the way they came off, it was like I thought, at some point they're going to disagree with me or they're going to turn on me, and that's what happened. And I thought, I have friends. This is what I want to do, and this is the business I want to build, and I wasn't going to just stop covering the Raiders of the issue because of people who are only my friends for like a year and had been listening to me before that, but suddenly, wanted to weigh in on your idea. And all I said is something I've said before, and I'll say again. The lawsuit is not going to get you the name and colors. That's not the way it's written. They didn't want me to say that, but that's true. If anybody reads it, this gets into why I'm a stickler for detail on things. I don't snow people. All right, and I don't bully people into say you got to say this just because I say it. No, that's not the way it works. Yeah. If you read the lawsuit, it does not say if the city of Oakland wins, they get the name and colors. It doesn't say that. There's a lot of stuff that has to go from here to there. And I thought we were suing a breach of contract anyway. But the other thing that I came to realize is, and what made me less enthusiastic about the whole thing, is the city of Oakland is not working to replace the Raiders. It's just sitting there, and we don't do economic development. That's what bothers me. Okay? It'd be one thing if we had an active effort, we were going to build a new stadium anyway, and we were going to build our infrastructure anyway, but we just were we're just lazy. And it's disgusting.
Whatever happened, it's funny. The only one that I've seen so far, or actually before the Raiders left, there was Ronnie Lott and Company who really wanted to do something. Okay, at a point in time. But since the Raiders have left, it seems to be that what's his name, Marshawn Lynch, with the arena football. Okay,
yeah, that's different, and that's a different situation.
Yeah,
but look,
it was like
Ronnie came in, but
there.
Right, but see, that's different. And again, the city of Oakland itself doesn't have. Well, look. The Raiders came to be in Las Vegas because of the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee. In other words, it was a government effort that brought together business and had some heavy hitters in politics to make this happen. Everybody was a somebody, even people who weren't maybe half somebodies, were involved in getting the Raiders to Las Vegas, and they all fell in line like worker ants. We didn't have that kind of effort. Okay, you had Harry Reid. All right, you had. It was remarkable how many people in Nevada pulled together to make that happen. Not just Adelson, okay? And the Oakland should see that as a model and say, hey, you know what? We need to copy that for economic development. But guess what? Nothing. And it harms the city in many different ways. San Francisco, too. California has forgotten how to do economic development. It's a bad thing. So says it was terrible. Okay, yeah, I have to check that out. Al saw where the NFL is going financially, wanted to beat everybody to the punch. Yep. John says, what do you think about Mark Davis buying and becoming owner? I love it. And again, I say that he did that because he also saw that he needed more sports activity. The idea was that they needed 49 events so that the stadium would eventually pencil out. Right now, they're going to need a giant subsidy too. Because look, Garth Brooks is not coming. They moved that back to July. And they got to stop moving things back, and they have to actually start going and say, hey, look, here's some money that we need in order to make all to catalyze activity. You know? He says, Al came back to Oakland for a reason. Al would never got a loan for a stadium. Al will take your money, but he wasn't going to put it up. That's true. Hey, folks, it was 209, Miss Dave. I'm going to have to go and get some shut-eye, man.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for sticking around. Hey, everybody. Dave, stick around the backstage. Everybody, that ends this broadcast. I'll be back tomorrow. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.
Have a good night.